Compounders vis reactors, the invisible habit that decides your life. If you could fast forward 2 lives 20 years, something strange would happen. They would start almost identically and end almost unrecognizable. Same city, same schools, similar families, similar opportunities, similar intelligence. 20 years later, one of them has built a life. Stability, meaningful relationships, work they're proud of, something that feels like it belongs to them. The other is still waiting for things to click, still feeling like they're one breakthrough away, still wondering why effort alone never seems to be enough. The difference isn't talent. It isn't luck. It's whether their life compounds or reacts. In the 1990s, psychologist Anders Ericsson spent years studying world-class performers across disciplines: musicians, chess players, athletes, and surgeons. What he found wasn't what most people expected. The best performers weren't simply more talented. They had built systems that made improvement automatic. Daily structures that produced progress, whether they felt motivated or not. But what Ericsson's research pointed to goes far beyond performance. It points to something that quietly determines the entire shape of a life. Today, we need to talk about what that actually looks like. Compounders and reactors. Most people move through life in reaction. They respond to what arrives. They manage what appears. They handle today's problems with today's energy. And tomorrow, they do the same. There is nothing wrong with this. It is how most people survive. But survival and compounding are 2 completely different modes of operating, and they produce 2 completely different lives over time. Reactors live on a treadmill, always moving, always working, but still in the same place. Compounders build escalators. The steps are small, almost boring, but every step lifts them higher. Reactors work harder. Compounders move farther. Reactors manage today. Compounders design tomorrow. Reactors solve problems. Compounders build advantages. Compounders are not more talented or more disciplined by nature. What they have done, often without fully realizing it, is shift from reacting to building. From managing the present to designing the future. From asking, "What do I need to handle today?" to asking, "What, done consistently, would change everything a year from now?" That shift sounds simple. It is not. Because reacting feels urgent and real, while compounding feels slow and invisible. The reactor is always busy, always handling something, always responding. And because they are always in motion, it is very easy to confuse activity with progress. The compounder knows the difference, and that knowledge, applied across years, produces outcomes that look from the outside like luck. The threshold. There is a point most people never reach. Psychologists who study habit formation call it automaticity. The moment when a behavior stops requiring conscious effort and becomes part of how a person simply operates. But there is something beyond automaticity that rarely gets discussed. There is a threshold where small improvements stop feeling like effort and start becoming identity. Before that threshold, growth feels slow and unrewarding. The system exists but feels fragile. The habits are in place but feel like they could collapse at any moment. Progress is real but invisible. And because nothing has visibly changed yet, the brain keeps asking the same question: is this actually working? Most people quit here, not because they are weak, but because the threshold is invisible. You cannot see it approaching. You only recognize it after you have crossed it. When you notice, one ordinary day, that the person you were trying to become is simply who you are now. The gap between a compounding life and a reacting life is often nothing more than this. One person crossed the threshold, and one person stopped just before it. Discomfort, resistance, and the pause. Here is where compounders and reactors diverge most visibly and most quietly. Every meaningful thing you want is on the other side of resistance you are currently avoiding. Not dramatic suffering, just the quiet friction that appears whenever something important begins. Reactors have developed a remarkably efficient relationship with that resistance. They make it disappear as quickly as possible. Reach for the phone. Switch tasks. Find something easier. The discomfort dissolves immediately, and a small invisible cost is paid. Compounders have learned something different. Discomfort is directional. The things that trigger the most resistance in your mind are often the exact things that would change your trajectory. But here is the deeper layer. The moment resistance appears, something else arrives alongside it. Emotion, anxiety that says don't start, frustration that says quit, doubt that says what's the point. And for most people, it is not the resistance that stops them. It is acting on that emotion before the moment passes. What compounders have developed, and it is a skill not a personality trait, is a small but critical gap between feeling something and acting on it. A pause, a space in which one question can be asked. Is this feeling telling me something important, or is it just resistance wearing a disguise? That pause is where long-term trajectories are decided. The person who can feel the anxiety and start anyway, feel the self-doubt and show up anyway, feel the frustration and stay focused anyway, that person is not more gifted. They have simply practiced the pause long enough that it became automatic. Discomfort points the way. The pause creates the space to follow it. The environment nobody talks about. Here is an uncomfortable question worth sitting with honestly. If you average the 5 people you spend the most time with, their relationship with discomfort, their time horizons, their sense of what is normal and what is possible, would that average represent the life you want? For most people, the honest answer is no. Human beings are social calibrators. The brain constantly scans its environment for behavioral norms and adjusts accordingly. This is not weakness, it is neuroscience. And it means that the environment you inhabit is not a passive backdrop to your choices. It is an active force shaping what you believe is achievable, what you consider normal effort, and what ambitions feel reasonable versus delusional. Compounders have placed themselves, intentionally or not, in environments where the norms pull upward, where growth is expected, where the question is not whether to improve but how. Reactors are often surrounded by environments where staying flat is normal, socially rewarded, and even implicitly required, where standing out feels like betrayal, where trying and failing publicly is more embarrassing than never trying at all. You cannot consistently outperform your environment through willpower alone. Eventually, the environment wins. The only durable solution is to change it. What the gap actually is. The 2 lives we started with didn't separate because of one decision. They separated because of thousands of ordinary days that looked almost identical in the moment, but were quietly pointing in different directions. After everything, the systems, the threshold, the discomfort, the pause, the environment, what is the actual separation between a life that compounds and a life that reacts? It is not a dramatic difference. It is not a single decision or a moment of transformation. It is the accumulation of tiny daily choices, each one nearly invisible on its own, that compound across years into entirely different lives. The person who stayed with discomfort 5 more minutes, 10,000 times. The person who built the system instead of waiting for motivation. The person who practiced the pause until it became natural. The person who crossed the threshold because they refused to stop just before it. These are not heroic acts. They are almost embarrassingly small. But repeated across a decade, they produce outcomes that look from the outside like talent, like luck, like some quality that certain people simply have. It is not mysterious. It is just quiet, and it is available to anyone willing to start. The last thing. A life rarely changes in a moment. It changes in ordinary days. Days that feel small while they are happening. Days no one else notices. Days that seem to disappear without leaving a mark. Until one day the difference becomes impossible to ignore. That day is not a gift. It is not luck. It is not talent. It is built quietly. one ordinary day at a time. Start today. If this shifted something for you, tell me in the comments. I'm curious which part landed hardest. And if you found yourself in this video somewhere, as a reactor, as someone standing just before the threshold, as someone who already knows what needs to change, that's worth sitting with. Subscribe if you want more thinking like this. There's a lot more coming.